Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this fine day? Well, I'll tell you how Ken Hatch is doing. He's scorching. It is quite warm out there, isn't it? I must admit, I've not been too far afield this morning, but it certainly feels warm enough in here. I had a panting dog just under the desk up until fairly recently, but she's gone away. Andy Thornton's just joined us as well. Good morning, Andy. How are you doing, my friend? Thank you very much indeed for being here. Still loving the play on words in your the name of your channel. Jim Turner is here as well. Morning, peeps. He says, morning, Jim. Just trying to spot some familiar names over. Jeff Kershaw has just joined us over on Instagram, and I'm fairly sure I saw Dan Cullen here earlier. There he is, ready and waiting. That was actually before the show started. In fact, Dan was here at 11 past 7 this morning. Yeah, 11 past 7. Yesterday afternoon, I did tell you I was going to do this. I interviewed an American scientist, a geologist and asbestos specialist. He achieved something quite remarkable yesterday. He was the smartest man in the room, even though he wasn't even in the room. He was in America. I was here, and I felt completely outgunned. But it was an absolutely fascinating conversation. We were talking about the fallout from 9/11. It turns out the guy in question, a guy called Sean Fitzgerald, had actually been into the World Trade Center some years before the whole sorry business of 9/11 actually happened, because he had been asked to classify and catalogue the materials, toxic and otherwise, that were actually in the building. And then lo and behold, obviously the building came down, and he was very aware of the potential fallout from that. Really interesting conversation. Also interesting is the fact, on this show we tend to talk about asbestos in terms of demolition and construction, because it is an ever-present danger. Did you know it's in, or it can be in things like talcum powder? Women's makeup. Do you know that? Potentially. Yeah, it really can. Dan Cullen is here officially now. Morning, Dan. And Mark Whiting is here as well. Dan, I've already pressed your button somewhere, not biblically, obviously. There's Mark Whiting's thing as well. John Andrew 866 just joined us over on Instagram. So has a Roma Bass or Roma Bass, not entirely sure which one of those it is. Very quickly, we'll do this one fairly quietly because I don't want to upset the good lady of the house. But I had to. I've actually written something about this whistleblower that is doing his thing over on LinkedIn at the moment. I was advised against it. I'm not warned. I have to stress, I was not warned against it. I was advised against it. But how do you, as a proper journalist, how do you ignore the fact that this is going on in the background? So I have covered it, as much for my own well-being as anything else. I've put it behind a paywall, but if you want to have a look at that, you can. It's over on Demolition Insider. I'll put a link to. I'll put a link to Demolition Insider in the chat. I don't expect any of you to pay for it, because that's not the idea. But just wanted to be fairly selective about who got to see it. Speaking of which, I actually had a subscription request yesterday from somebody who has basically spent a good few years denigrating, running me down, trying to undermine me, trying to get me banned from events. Took enormous pleasure in saying, yeah, no, you're not coming in. Yeah, that's a thing that happened. We've got a great show for you today, as I'd like to think we always have. And I am going to end, I'm not going to do the voice, but I am going to end on a morning monologue today with the title, the modest title, I Have a Dream. I'm not going to do it in the style of Martin Luther King, because I can't. There is only one Martin Luther King, and sadly he's no longer with us. But I do have a dream at the end of the show, so stick around for that. As I say, loads to get through. So shall we crack on? I think it's time to roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. It is Thursday, the 10th of July. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. I'll come back to the chat in just a moment. Let me get this out of the way. In today's show, Caterpillar takes a tilt at the rotator business. Envirotec makes an impact with Bobcat. Building hope with Hyundai. And deconstruction Egyptian style. It doesn't mean they're all walking around doing the walk like an Egyptian. It's just from Egypt. And in my morning monologue today, I have a dream. Told you I'm not going to do the voice. Mick, good morning to you. Mick, how you doing, mate? I hope you're fitting well. And morning, you're fine day for it. It certainly is a fine day for it. Just not entirely sure what it is. But as soon as I figured that out, I'm going to go and do that. And Dan says, some people never learn. Yeah, it's it's not so much the fact that they don't learn. It's you kind of ostracize people at your own risk, because if somebody says something that you don't like, and I frankly I admit that I do that on a fairly regular basis, I can understand being cut off, but you can't then turn around a week, 6 weeks, a year later and go, I'd actually quite like to know what he's saying now, because that's not how it works. Not how it works. Anyway, people, yeah, there's I've already posted the question today, but I am going to quickly remind you of it before we get into the main meat of the show today. It looks like this. Yes, I'm still bastardizing Gary Muirhead's original question. Gary originally asked, what is your go-to order at a fish and chip shop? Well, we did that. We've now done Indian food, but I thought we'd move on and complete the triumvirate and go for this. What is your go-to meal at a Chinese restaurant or takeaway? Now, personally, Hong Kong-style sweet and sour chicken, crispy shredded chili beef, and Singapore noodles. Spicy, ideally, with seafood. But what about you? What is your go-to? Should you find yourself in a Chinese restaurant? Should you find yourself at a loose end thinking, can't be asked to cook? How about a Chinese takeaway? What are you going for? Dan says, I upset people too. Yeah, you can't not. If you go around biting your tongue and not saying what needs to be said, well, things don't change, do they? I mean, even today's morning monologue, which is good-natured and vaguely spiritual in nature, I'm sure it'll piss some people off. Get over it. Get over it. And my other half has leapt into the fray, and I can vouch for this. This is absolutely true. My wife's favourite, her go-to, is crab meat and sweet corn soup. Really is. Mr. Muirhead has arrived. How are you doing, Gary? Just to let you know, we are bastardizing your original fish and chip shop question. Our question of the day today is, what is your go-to when you go to the local Chinese? Assuming you do go to the local Chinese. Jim Turner, to me, Egyptian style makes me think Wilson, Keppel and Betty. Jim, if you'd have said that earlier, I'd have sprinkled a bit of sand around and I'd have done the thing. I'd have done the sand dance for you, but you've mentioned it a bit too late, and frankly, I'd have to hoover the sand up afterwards anyway, which is not great for anyone. But well done. Do you know? I watched a thing the other day. I'm trying to remember who it was. Does anyone remember? If you're of a certain age, i.e., like me, there used to be a guy on TV called Dickie Henderson. Do you know Dickie Henderson? He was kind of like a poor man's Bruce Forsyth. Did a bit of singing, did a bit of dancing, told a few jokes. Dickie Henderson, okay? Well, Dickie Henderson, I spotted this on YouTube, had a bit of one of his shows where he had Max Wall, do you remember Max Wall? And also Billy Dainty, if you remember Billy Dainty. And basically the three of them spent 3 and a bit minutes just doing a funny walk. And that apparently used to pass for entertainment back in the 70s. They did a silly walk and people laughed and were entertained. Are you not entertained? Well, I am now. You've done the funny walk. Seriously. Billy Dainty, Maxwell, Dickie Henderson. Look it up. You'll be bored like I was. Time to crack on. Our first video is going to feature the mighty Caterpillar, and it will be along right after this. Mick says, strange, really. Limehouse was the original Chinese area. Was it? Was that? I mean, obviously, we have Chinatown up off the back of Leicester Square now these days. Had some great Chinese food shops. Sorry to say now, I just call them who flung shit. Who flung shit, yeah. And then, what is the name of the Chinese cyclist, Wong Ki Tire? Is that there? Anyone remember that? Busy today, may not be able to join in as much. Not a problem. Dan, do you still have your crown though? Do you still have the much coveted purple crown? Whatever the hell that is. Yes, I've promised you Caterpillar. Caterpillar, you shall have. It seems like everybody these days has got their own. Well, either a quick coupler or a tilt rotator, or in many cases both. Well, Caterpillar has its own tilty, and it looks like this. Going back to the Chinese, Mike Wolf has just joined us again. Morning, Mike. I do like the Chinese place, a Mamelad in Brixton Market. My wife and I were there last week. She had her usual wonton soup, and I had the vegetable rice while we shared an order of vegetable spring rolls. See, these vegetarians. Yeah, listen, this is a broad church here on the Breakfast Show. We allow anyone in, even vegetarians. Morning, Mike. Let's have a look. Going back to the Caterpillar thing, no surprise, it's similar to Steel Wrist. What could you possibly do differently, I guess? Honestly, can't these manufacturers not improvise on these? No difference at all? Well, I guess if somebody's perfected it, there's only so much you can do. But I take your point, though. Mick says this. He says, had a quick trip up to Hull to see my son. A few demo blokes there mumbling about a northern firm going to the wall. Have you picked up anything? I haven't, because I've been somewhat distracted, Mick. I don't know if you're aware, while you've been focused on Hull, there is currently a whistleblower doing the rounds over on LinkedIn. Who is upsetting many an apple cart right now. Yeah, if you're on LinkedIn, Mick, go take a look. If you need guidance on where to find it, I'll be happy to do that. I have written about it. I've said this already. I have written about it, but for a good number of reasons, not least personal protection, I have actually put it behind a paywall, and I apologise for that. But you know, you've got to look after number one at the end of the day, haven't you? But Mick, if you need access to that, let me know, and I'll show you where to find it. What do we do next? Oh yeah, Bobcat time. Back after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we're off to America, the United States thereof, to see a company called Envirotec and how they are harnessing? That's not harvesting or harnessing, it's harnessing. How they are using, should I say, Bobcat equipment quite effectively. I think you'll agree.
I'm Robert with ECS, and we're on site grading today. ECS stands for Envirotec Construction Services. We're out of Argyle, Texas, and we do large residential and commercial development, demolition, erosion control, and grading. Most of the time when you're dealing with large-scale contractors that offer the services that we offer, we're making sure that we pick up the phone and answer. Our philosophy is if we don't answer that call and they need us, they have every right to go find somebody else. We have roughly 30 machines in operation every day. Our fleet offers the diversity that the job sites require. Small machines from the MT100 all the way through the R-Series T66. We have 770s. We have small compact excavators that allow us to adapt to the situation. We have every attachment that I can think of that Bobcat offers. The different attachments allow us to load the trailer once, deliver the materials and the machine to the job, allow us to not make a second trip. And so we don't have to go swap a machine. We don't have to get anything that we left behind. It allows us to load it, get it to the site, and utilize it as effectively and efficiently as we can. What we have found is it doesn't matter what brand you go with, what color you have on your machine. It's about the support, the service that you have behind you. And what Bobcat of North Texas does really well is they support us as though we are the only customer. Landon Clifton is our salesman. He's a great guy. He's always helped us when we need help. He understands our difficulty sometimes of being either down a machine or out of machine or the need for another machine. He does what he can any time I call to help us. The thing I'm most proud of in this business is the relationships I built with our customers, with our employees, and we take tremendous pride knowing that any street we drive on, it's very likely that we've had our machines there with our guys doing quality work. That's work worth doing.
Ken Hatcher, you're absolutely right. They certainly do love a skid steer in America. Yeah, skid steers and the compact track loaders as well. Ken says, I like the guy cleaning windows. Could do with him around my house right about now. Dan says, this whistleblower will blow the wrong balloon and something will happen. Karma can be a bitch. My understanding, reading between the lines and having spoken to a few people, I've got a funny feeling this is actually the karma. By the sound of it, something's already happened that has pushed this guy over the edge. So keep an eye out for that. And Mick, yes, I will send you details of that immediately after the show is done and dusted. What do we got next? Hyundai, call it what you will. Back over there in just a second.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
The film I'm about to show you has the title Building Hope. Building Hope with Hyundai. I'll leave you to judge whether that's the case, but it's a good film. Enjoy.
What does this massive machine do? Is it merely digging and moving dirt? Sometimes it saves lives from collapsed buildings, creates playgrounds for children, or builds warm homes for families. While the machine operates the same way, what it produces or destroys depends on the operator's intentions. We believe that construction machinery is not just a tool. It has the power to rebuild lives. Well-intentioned efforts enable construction equipment to create a hopeful future for someone.
Building a comfortable tomorrow.
Building a comfortable tomorrow could do with a bit of that. If Hyundai are watching this and you could supply me with an air-conditioned area in which to work, I'd be very grateful. I'd say nice things about you publicly. I really would, because it's warm as anything in here today. Mick, just to let you know, I have just sent you the thing. It'll be in your email inbox in the next couple of seconds, I would imagine. We got one more film to show you, I think, and we're heading for Egypt. I don't think we've been to Egypt as a part of the show before, but we're going there in just a second after this. Mick has just asked, did that film cut early? I don't think it did. I think I've got the impression, I watched it yesterday, which is why I featured it on the show. I got the impression it's probably the beginning of a longer film. I'll keep an eye out for that. I'll let you know. But no, that was the full thing. It was only a minute or so. And the one I'm about to play you is even shorter still. This one's just 45 seconds. But it is in Egypt. It does feature our friends at Envirotec. The hat is not an accident. Here we go. Demolished like an Egyptian. Anyone remember Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles? Anyone remember Susanna Hoffs, the main singer, where she did the little side-eye thing going on? Yeah. She's in her 60s now, still looks fantastic. Just saying. Anybody that just to show that there is some continuity in this show. If you were here yesterday, you'll know that our morning monologue was actually talking about the Great Pyramid of Giza. Where is Giza? It's in Egypt. Egypt yesterday, Egypt today. There is a flow. There's a waxing and waning of this show. Sort of. Carlin says, cool. It was Egypt. I bet it wasn't cool. I bet it was bloody roasting there. Last time I was there, it was warm as toast. About as warm as I feel right now, actually. Anyway, that's about it for the main part of this morning's show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like over into my morning monologue, which I'm going to do not in the style of Martin Luther King. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Hope to see you again very soon. But if you do have the time and the inclination, I shall return immediately after this. I probably should have saved this for Martin Luther King Day. I don't actually know when that is, so I've decided to go with it anyway. I was just thinking about the Martin Luther King speech. You know, I have a dream. And once I started running with it, I thought that's a subject matter for a morning monologue. So here we go. And as I say, I'm not going to try to do it in the Martin Luther King style. This is just a bloke from South London. Okay. I have a dream. I have a dream that one day in every town and city, from the muddy trench to the tallest tower crane, no worker shall fear for their life just because they've turned up to work. That no mother shall receive a call saying her son isn't coming home. That no child should grow up remembering their father, not by his voice or his laugh, but by his presence at the dinner table every single evening. I have a dream of a world where safety isn't a slogan, where it isn't a poster gathering dust in a site office. It's a sacred pact, where risk is managed, not tolerated, where a near miss is a lesson, not a statistic to be buried in a report, where safety isn't just a goal, but a guarantee. I have a dream of an industry where a worker's value is measured not by the colour of the card in their wallet, but by the dedication in their heart and the knowledge in their heads, where competence is earned, not assumed, where experience is measured not by a piece of paper, and that piece of paper is not mistaken for wisdom. I dream of sites where job security is a given, not a gamble, where jobs and contracts don't vanish like smoke the moment the margins become tight, where the phrase last in, first out is a relic of the past, and people are kept on not because it's easy, but because it's right and because they've earned it. I have a dream of an industry that doesn't just talk about trust, but builds it, where employers and employees stand shoulder to shoulder, not nose to nose, where contractors and clients speak with honesty, not suspicion, where demolition firms are seen not as a necessary evil, but as trusted guardians of safety, progress, and heritage. I have a dream of a world where decisions aren't made solely in boardrooms, but shaped by those who know the taste of concrete dust in their mouths and the ache in their knees at the end of a hard day's graft. Where worker insight isn't just welcomed, it's central. Where care, not cost, drives the decisions that shape lives. I have a dream of a world where diversity isn't an awkward footnote, but the first line of the story. Where women aren't an exception on site, but a vital part of the crew. Where black, brown, and white stand side by side. Where gay and transgender people aren't whispered about behind porta-cabins, but are embraced with respect and humanity. But I also dream of a world where roles are awarded on merit, not quotas. I have a dream of an industry where wages are paid on time, where companies are not strung along by late payments and broken promises, where people know their worth and receive it without delay or hesitation. Because dignity isn't just about safety. It's also about being paid fairly and on time for the work we've done. I have a dream of an industry that understands that a broken mind is no less serious than a broken arm, where mental health is not a topic for a poster once a year, but a daily commitment, where people can say, I'm not okay, without fear, and here in return, we've got you. I have a dream of a world where our industry leads in sustainability, in circular economy thinking, in materials recovery, and where that leadership is recognised and rewarded, not because we're forced, but because we care, because we recognise that our legacy shouldn't be piles of rubble and spent carbon, but clean air and a future worth living in. I dream of a time when the public sees demolition not as destruction, but as transformation, as the vital first step in renewal, as the clearing of the old to make way for the new, with skill, with precision, and with pride. I dream of a world where governments understand our worth, not just as mindless drones, but as custodians of heritage and harbingers of change, where we're not just burdened with rules and regulations and blame, but recognised as a key part of the solution. I have a dream of an industry worthy of its workers, of workers respected by their industry, of a future that honours the past, yet dares to do better. Yes, I have a dream. It might be naive, but it's not impossible. It's not even distant. It's within reach. This industry has always been defined by its strength, but we need to be strong in the right ways. We need an industry where the hard hats are not just a sign of protection, but of pride, where high-vis is not just a uniform, but a symbol of unity, where boots on the ground walk together, not apart. I have a dream. There you are. Martin Luther King is currently spinning at 100 revs per minute because I've just completely bastardized his speech. But there you are. Listen, all of those things are the things that keep me awake at night and get me out of bed in the morning, and that's what I've come up with. So there you are. I have a dream. Dan says, very bloody well written, Mark. That's caught my attention. Thank you. Yeah, that was kind of the idea. Andy Thornton says, true safety in the construction industry is not about preventing accidents. It's building a culture where every worker's life, health and dignity are valued as highly as the structures they create. It is. It is. And I have lots and lots of fond memories of this industry. And every once in a while you get what I can only describe as kind of a moment of clarity. I was with a guy, this is on an Erith demolition project. And I asked their health and safety guy, how, obviously, you're here to do the whole health and safety thing. When you leave here, does all of that kind of thing go with you? And he said, basically, it has informed every aspect of his life. Even things like, and the example he gave was, even if I've got to change a light bulb, in the past, I'd have grabbed the nearest chair, stood on it and changed the light bulb and hoped for the best. He said, now go and get a stepladder, have my wife stood at the bottom of the stepladder, because I know I'm only one lapse away from an accident. That's what it is. It is a mindset. It's not a tick box. And all of this, all that I said there, should we have more women in construction? If they bring value and dedication and commitment, yes, not because it fills out a quota, but because they belong, they've earned the right. Should we have greater safety? Yes, not because it makes our CVs look better and our applications on pre-qualification questionnaires look better, but because it is the right thing to do. Should we directly employ people, give them the benefit of pensions and healthcare, paid holidays? Yes, not because somebody insists that we do it, not because it's regulated, but because that is the right thing to do. All of it is a mindset thing, and I think we've lost a lot of sight of that. There is Dr. Yvonne Waterman saying what Dan said. Thank you very much indeed, Yvonne. Martin Luther King wouldn't have even surpassed this. Oh, I think he would. I think he would. I'd love to be able to do. There are several people I would love to be able to emulate. From a vocal point of view, Martin Luther King would be one. Barack Obama would be another. Neil Kinnock, bizarrely, just fantastic delivery, superb. Mick says, weird. Was thinking on the same lines of what you were saying. My greatest fear at the moment is this new board who are going to try to get 100,000 new workers. My biggest worry is they're going to rush through a card system to those who join construction and demolition. It's bad enough watching those who obtain the cards now. I'm worried that if this is rushed, when the experience is needed, it's going to be overlooked, and there are going to be people who, God forbid, are a walking accident about to happen. I'm assuming that is because the thing runs out. That is one of the things, and I've got to admit I'm equally guilty. So thank you very much indeed for pointing that out, Mick. I am, as you've probably gathered by now, I am somewhat sceptical about many things that politicians and government say. Obviously, this construction skills mission board that Angela Rayner has put her name to. She's involved the Construction Industry Training Board, the Construction Leadership Council, who together have basically failed to address the skill shortage in the UK demolition and construction industry for the last 30-odd years. But lo and behold, they are now part of a brand new quango, in which case, in where they will probably do exactly the same thing again. One thing that nobody has addressed, myself included, although Mick just has, is we don't actually want 100,000 people. We want 100,000 of the right people. There is absolutely no point in hiring people that are unsafe, incompetent, that don't want to be there, that would rather be somewhere else, that won't turn up for work, that have no work ethic, and so on down the line. It's much the same as the argument for things like women in construction. And I know Tristan Mays, my mate, pulls me up on this on a fairly regular basis. I'm a huge advocate for more women in construction. I think it would make our sites better. I think it will give us a fresh perspective. And let's not forget, they are more than half of the UK population, and therefore we could take out a lot of the skill shortage if we were just more welcoming to women. But it doesn't work if it's just a case of you're a woman, you'll do. It needs to be the right woman. It needs to be a woman that wants to be there for a start, that can bring something to the party, whether that is a specific set of skills or a specific set of experience, whatever it might be. It's not just a case of we've got a job and a piece of paper says it must be a woman that fills that job. It should be the right person. And I would say exactly the same about whether people are black, brown, green, or purple, about whether they're gay, straight, lesbian, transgender, doesn't matter. If your CV says that you are good for that job, come one, come all, we are all one here. Not just a case of we need a warm body and it would look good on our PR if that person were female, trans, black. No, it should be down to merit. So yeah, those are the things that keep me awake at night. It's bizarre, right? I probably need to get my head wobbled maybe a little bit, maybe think of other things. But yeah, those are the things that trouble me at night. One of the things that struck me, I was ironing this T-shirt. I know it doesn't look particularly on, but I did iron this T-shirt this morning. And one of the things that struck me about this is we across the sphere of demolition and construction, we have lots and lots of meetings. There are regional meetings, there are online meetings, there are national meetings, there are cross-party meetings, demolition here, construction there, never the twain shall meet, although sometimes they do. We have all of these meetings. How often are all of those things discussed? I know within, it's the one I know best, within the demolition sphere, there are discussions about abiding by regulations and about audits and stuff like that. Sometimes there's a discussion of an accident that's happened. Sometimes there's a discussion about somebody whose company has gone down the toilet and so on down the line. But how often does anybody within demolition, within construction, within waste, within quarrying, take a big step back and say, okay, so here's the industry today. How do we get it from there to there? How do we... None of what I said today will come as a surprise to anybody that works in the demolition or construction industry. All of the issues that I raised are well known, well documented. But how often, outside of these four walls, and I'm including you within these four walls, how often are they actually discussed? How often does Build UK hold a meeting dedicated to bringing more women into their fold? How often does the Construction Plant Hire Association talk about gender equality? How often does the National Federation of Demolition Contractors talk about ethnic equality? Do they? Do they at all? In my experience, they do not. Maybe they should. Dan says, no matter who you are, you should have ethics and willingness to prove your capabilities to get on in construction, not just a number. Yeah. Ethics. A lot of it comes down to ethics. And unfortunately, I come from a different generation, I guess, where I grew up expecting ethics and loyalty and honesty to be a given. Obviously, the older you get, the more you have that beaten out of you. But would that not be better? If you could fix one thing and it was ethics, if you are a demolition contractor working for a main contractor, the building's on the floor, you get paid. If you're working for that demolition contractor, the building's on the floor, you get paid. You get paid on time, you get paid what you're owed. There's no discussion about it because, there has been a conversation at some point, either in your contract of employment or your contract with, a tier one contractor or a client. This is what we will do. This is how much it will cost. It's done. There you go. There's your money. Would that not be better? How much money is being wasted in the UK demolition and construction industry on litigation and arbitration? I have here a piece of paper that says, I will do this and I will do Y and you will pay me X. And then come the end of it, I've done Y. Well, we'd really rather pay you V or W. Yeah. Jim Turner says, firstly, people are all the same, although they're obviously all different, so should be all treated like that. Yeah, no special considerations based on gender, colour, race or religion, as it makes a mockery of equal opportunities. As for pensions, it should be each individual's responsibility to plan for their future. And safety is everyone's responsibility, but a lot of rules are very poorly thought out. I'm going to pick you up on that final point because I agree with it. It is, we all do have a personal responsibility. But I think the employer has a responsibility, a duty of care for one thing, but also a responsibility to set the tone. We will provide an umbrella to keep you protected from the downpour of potential danger. But at the same time, we are now looking to you to make sure you're also wearing a raincoat and not walking out into the rain where you're going to get wet. I realise I'm mixing my metaphors there, but it is a double thing there. Andy Thornton says, Mark, please DM me here on LinkedIn after the show. I will do that, Andy, not a problem at all. Mick says, my niece is in construction. She mentioned to me the company who she's working for, putting her through every course they can. She then asked if this is this such a good idea, as half of the cards she cannot visualise ever needing for the work she does. To top it all, she is now a supervisor. I would have said yes years ago. Get as many as you can. These days, I'm not so sure. I don't think there's any harm in having the cards. I mean, I do think there is an excess, where you see people, pick a card, any card, they've got 25 of the damn things. I think that's excessive. I don't think, particularly if you're at supervisor level, I don't think there's any harm in understanding the intricacies of the job from every potential level and perspective. I don't think there's any harm in that at all. But to what end? To what end? Are they training her because they've got some vision? Are they looking at your niece thinking, give it another 2 or 3 years and she'll go from supervisor to being a regional director or possibly a company director? We have a pathway laid out for her. Or is it a case of, we're going to train these bloody people and they'll tick a box? Yeah, send her off on another course. If it's that, less valuable, I would say. Jim says, take our industry into schools. You'll have a broader church of people coming into it. There is one of the things. I'm not even entirely sure how I'm going to explain this. One of my concerns for the demolition industry, and demolition is exactly the same as construction and so on down the line, is it's very, very easy for a company or for a trade body to become an echo chamber. If you have the same people at the top of a demolition company, a construction company, a plant hire company, for years and years and years, running it for 20, 30 years, your field of vision narrows. You become set in your ways. You're not looking over here at a thing. You're not looking over, you're doing what you've always done because, frankly, it's got you to where you are at the moment. What I think is a key consideration when we talk about, widening our employment net, for example, to include Black people, brown people, people of other religions, people of other genders, people of other sexual orientations, whatever it might be. They bring fresh perspective. Imagine, particularly if you've empowered them properly, you're holding your regular toolbox talk where everyone is bored out of their minds, everyone's yawning, and you do this and you do that, and everybody got that, yeah, I got that. And then somebody, a woman or a brown person or a gay person or a trans person stands up and goes, yeah, would this not be better? The last company I worked for, different industry, but we used to do this. Would that not be better? Would that not be safer, more productive? But all the time we keep drawing from the same increasingly shallow gene pool of workers, management, industry leaders. You end up, as I say, with an echo chamber where we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. If anybody remembers the interview that I did with Vijay Nerva from when he was at Bobcat about a year ago, I guess, he was talking about the fact that he was working within a construction equipment company, but he was spending an awful lot of time looking at what was being done in terms of technology in things like the pharmaceutical industry or the medical industry or the cryptocurrency industry. Is there anything over there that not everything, but that little bit there, we could apply that here? And that's how we've ended up with things like LED displays in Bobcat machines, should you so desire. How they've ended up with a games console that allows you to drive that machine safely and at a safe distance. It's looking beyond the norm, going further afield and taking that sort of pollination of ideas and principles from elsewhere. We don't do that enough. We have an echo chamber. You think about The NFDC, for example, I've said this before, if you are one of the great and the good of the NFDC, you've come up through the region. So you've probably you've been a member, maybe you've been a second vice at regional level, then you've been a vice chairman at regional level, then you become chairman at regional level. You then bump up, assuming you kept your nose clean and everything else, you then become a second vice president, you become a vice president, and ultimately you become president. You have gone on a journey of 10, maybe 12 years, during which time you are basically working with exactly the same people with exactly the same ideas. Some of those ideas will be really, really good. Those ideas are the things that gave us guidance notes, that gave us the site audit scheme and so on down the line. But where is that dissenting voice? Where is that young person's voice going, that doesn't really cut it these days? You know, we've always done it like that. But every other industry is doing that. Autonomy, robotization, remote control. We need to look further afield. Here, our industry yesterday, what can we do to build a better industry? It shouldn't be about how many categories you've got on your card. It should be about your experience compared to years ago. I did make that point, and it is one of those things that does... it troubles me probably less than the people that are suffering from it, but it is a key consideration. Not all card-carrying workers are created equal. I can never remember the colour of the cards, but let's for example say that let's say that Dan has got 25 years under his belt, and he's got I'm going to do this out for pure effect. He holds a purple card. He holds a purple card. He's done the test. He's done the training. He's done the all of the various bits, and he holds a purple card. But somebody fresh out of college can go through the same training course and, sit the exam and everything else, and they too have a purple card. There is nothing in the world that will convince me that somebody straight out of college deserves to have the same card or the same qualification as somebody that's been doing it for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. If you are going to have... Listen, I hate the card scheme because it is overly complex. But if you are going to have a card scheme, surely the reflection should not be you have passed a test. It's what that card actually means. And if that means that you've got to have a purple card with a gold stripe that says you're, dyed in the wall, 20 years experience, which differentiates you, it makes you the top guy in your job. It means you earn a few more quid. It gives you added responsibility. Not, 20 years experience, no experience. They are not the same thing. One calls previous 5 employers and you just not hired to fill that seat. Keep your numbers on site. Indeed. Mick says, adding to that, she wants to get into demolition. And I've got to add this. She's doing a structural engineer's degree off her own back. So bloody proud of her. But she's worried that being gay will leave her open to abuse on site. Isn't it awful? Isn't it? I'll do it again. Isn't it shameful? Isn't it disgraceful that I'm looking at somebody? One of our brothers here, his niece, faces not one but 2 hurdles, despite the fact that she is clearly dedicated to the industry. She's doing this degree off her own back. Structural engineering in demolition is absolutely vital. It's something we're crying out for. But because of her gender and her sexual orientation, she has to overcome not 1, but 2 hurdles. Isn't that a disgrace? Isn't that a disgrace? And I was almost going to say in this day and age, it's a disgrace regardless of day and age. If you've got somebody that is that dedicated to the craft, when she comes out the other end of her structural engineering degree, she will probably have more knowledge than 85% of the industry. But because she happens to be in possession of a set of ovaries, and because she happens to like women, which frankly I don't blame her for, they're much better than men, she has a problem? The fuck is that about? Pardon my French. How does that make any sense at all? And at what point, we're not talking here about somebody hod carrying where, physical strength, by and large, men tend to be stronger than women. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a job where brain power is more important and much more important rather than physical power. She brings that brain power in spades, and she has a problem because she's a woman and because she likes women. I like women. It's never held me back in my career. How does that make any sense at all? If somebody can explain it to me, not our usual core of people that are watching here, all those over on Instagram and, the people that watch quietly, I think, we are largely on this show, we are largely of one mind. I think we're all pretty, liberal in many ways. If somebody can explain to me how that is an issue, I'd love to hear from you, because I frankly can't see the point. She has told me a few events people have put her through. Believe me, it took a few words in people's ear holes from me, but I do worry about her most days. Yeah. Listen, I am speaking here as the father of two daughters. If either of them had come to me, particularly my younger one, but if either of them had come to me and said, we've been watching what you've been doing for the last 35 years, fancy a bit of that. That looks right up my street. I would do everything in my power to talk them out of it. Not because they're not capable, because they most certainly are, but because I wouldn't want them to go through what I know they would go through. Andy says, discrimination is rooted in an embedded culture that is too often normalized exclusion, making true progress dependent on a deep shift in values, leadership, and everyday behaviors on site and off. Yeah. Unfortunately, in this industry, tolerance works the wrong way round. We tolerate racism. We tolerate homophobia. We tolerate misogyny. And yet we don't tolerate gay and trans people. We don't tolerate black and brown people. We don't tolerate women. The way that this conversation started was that monologue, I have a dream. If that dream is to become even remotely a reality, then the people that are making women, ethnic minorities, trans and gay people unwelcome, who are harassing them, if you could take those out of the equation, you go a long way to fixing this industry. Takashi 2057 just joined us. Good morning, my friend. Are you in Japan? I'm fairly sure you said you are. Dan says, that makes no sense whatsoever. That shows the mentality of many workers. I know quite a few women who are gay, and man, they do work, and hard work as well. Show many men up. At what point? Here's so Dan, Andy, Mick's retired. Count Mick out. Ken, Gary, Steve, Chris, Jim. During your working day today, how many times will the colour of your skin, the contents of your underwear, or your preference in bedroom partners, shall we say, how often is that likely to impact what you're doing today? Jim, for example, are you about to put in some fence posts and somebody comes up and says, can't do that, Jim, you're white? No, because you're capable of doing it. I genuinely, I don't get it. I don't get it. Mick says, cheers, mate, good words. And when she comes up Saturday, I'll show her the show and your words. That will give her a bit more strength to carry on. Now, listen, don't take it from me. Don't take it from me. Thanks for that, Mick. But whatever her name is, you can drop in her name at this point. I'll tell you now, People are crying out for people with dedication, with determination, with commitment, with a strong work ethic. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care who you choose to go to bed with. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. It does not matter in life, and it sure as fuck doesn't matter on a demolition or a construction site. Chantel, listen to your uncle. He knows. It makes no difference. It might in the mind of a few petty fucking people, but the sooner those dinosaurs are killed off by an asteroid or they just die out of their own natural causes, this industry will be better. And on that day, Chantel, the industry will be inherited by people like you. I have a dream. Oi, I might be retired, but she picks my brain constantly. That's a day's work in itself. I bet it is. Everybody, that's an hour, and enough, because it started out as me. I have a dream, and now it's like, I really want to fucking shake people by the throat, which is not where I wanted to go, but that's where we've ended up. I'll be back tomorrow with something else. I've no idea what, but I can tell you one thing we are doing is we're going to have a really good look at the Devallon DD100 dozer. We've featured it here before, but we've never really got up close and personal. We're going to be doing that tomorrow amongst a bunch of other things as well. Dan says, great check. Thanks, Dan. And thank you for your contribution to it. Wouldn't be the same without you. Everybody, go and have a fine and splendid day. I will see you all tomorrow. Stay cool, stay hydrated, stay vaguely angry. Or I'll just do that and you'd leave that to me. Everybody, see you. Yeah, and Dad says, and keep the dream alive. Absolutely. I'd give the advice I'd give to those that aren't the norm is to graft and give as good as you get. Jim, as always, you are our moral compass, and I love you for it. Everybody, go and have a fantastic day. See you tomorrow. All the best.